The NDP was handed a pretty massive loss by voters last night. First, there was a large drop in their vote share across the country. You can see that everywhere that they had double digits, they were down by double digits, and it was just a straight loss across the board. And this resulted in the NDP dropping the number of MPs they were sending to Ottawa by 17. And now only seven NDP candidates have been elected. These NDP losses led to Conservative gains in some parts of the country, such as the Southern Ontario riding of London Fanshawe, where NDP incumbent Lindsay Matheson is projected to come in third, which is a surprising result. But in other ridings, a drop in NDP support benefited the Liberals, including in NDP leader Jagmeet Singh's own riding, where he is projected to finish behind both the Liberal and the Conservative candidates, prompting Singh to make this announcement about his future.
I've worked really hard to be worthy of this trust, to live up to the legacy of our movement. Hold on a sec here, guys. Thank you. One more sec. Tonight, I've been informed our party leader that I'll be stepping down as party leader as soon as an interim leader can be appointed.
Okay, here to talk about what's next for the NDP is Anne McGrath, campaign spokesperson for the Federal New Democrats. Anne, it's good to see you. Thanks for being here on a difficult day after a long campaign.
Thanks, David.
There's this emotional moment for Jagmeet Singh, but done with good humor and good character, which was what we saw kind of down the stretch run. When did it become clear it was going to be this kind of result for the party?
Well, I think we were hopeful till the very bitter end that it was going to be better than the most dire predictions, and actually, you know, I think it did surpass some of the most dire predictions, but it's definitely a devastating loss. And I think that I was holding out hope for a little bit more than 7. I was holding out hope for official party status, which would have still been a loss in many ways, because that's still only 12 seats. But you know, as the night went on, like early in the evening for sure, it became clear that that things were not going to go very well for us.
How quickly will it take, just as a bit of mechanics, for the party to settle on an interim leader? Because, you know, Mr. Singh without a seat and young family and the revelations about the security threats against him, I would imagine he'd like to get a bit more of his life back than he's had as a national leader. How quickly is that going to move?
Yeah, I think we'll want to move very quickly on that. The interim leader will be is a decision of caucus, and so they will probably want to have a caucus meeting fairly quickly. There's a lot of there are a lot of things to do in Parliament, just like to get things sorted out, you know, offices and staffing and all of those kinds of things. But they'll want to probably meet fairly quickly and decide on an interim leader. And then it's the party that actually makes the decisions about the permanent leadership, and you know, when that will be, what the rules will be for participating in that, how many debates there will be, what the entrance fee will be. All of that kind of stuff is a decision of federal council.
You know, I was speaking with Brad Levine about this earlier in the show, and you know, like you, a veteran of the party, and he was saying that, you know, back in '93, similar sort of outcome, and you build back from there. I mean, I don't know if past is always prologue, because things do change in the political world. I mean, where does this leave the New Democrats just on the national level? Because in the binary battles, you know, Manitoba, Saskatchewan, Alberta, BC, they do well in government or in opposition. On the national level, it gets more complicated, right? So what is the sort of the choice the New Democrats need to face as a federal party coming out of this election?
Well, it is true that we have been through something like this before. In 1993, we did lose official party status, but I will tell you that there is, you know, what Jagmeet talked about last night in his speech. He talked about defiant optimism, and I think that is a characteristic of New Democrats. I mean, I will tell you that in 1993, I voted for us when we were at 6% nationally in the polls, and we lost official party status, and you know, and I was living in Calgary at the time. So, you know, I think, and we did rebuild. We fought hard in that parliament under difficult circumstances. We had a Liberal government that made some very significant cuts to things. That was when they cut the housing program. It was when they made major cuts to health and social transfers, to the transfers to the provinces. It was when they started making the changes to the EI program that have changed it to the point that most workers don't even qualify for it anymore. And if you do qualify, you can't live on it. So a lot of really bad things happened with a majority Liberal government and the NDP without official party status. But we did fight, and I think that we're going to be in a similar position. I think we're going to keep fighting. We know what our values are, what our principles are. We also know that a lot of NDP voters voted for the Liberals, and they didn't vote for the Liberals out of a sense of joy or optimism or any of that. And they told us that. They told us that in research, in opinion surveys.
But a lot of them voted for the Conservatives too, Anne, right? Like Brian Massey came third, and that's not because all the vote went Liberal, right? Some of it, like in southwestern Ontario in particular, the seats all went blue. So there is something happening. And back in '93, I mean, the focus was on deeper economic integration with the United States. I don't think that's going to be the focus for the next couple of years. So that sort of changes the calibration of voters on a national level, does it not?
Yeah, we are going to have to evaluate like where all the votes went, but we certainly heard a lot from voters who felt like they had to vote Liberal. They had to vote for Mark Carney because of the threat from the Trump administration. They were very concerned about that, and they said that they didn't want to do it, but they felt like they had to. And I think that that's important to keep in mind. And we'll have to figure out what happened also with NDP voters who voted Conservative. Although that has been a dynamic in the past in our Canadian politics. We often talk about those blue-orange seats where there are people in many ridings who will never vote Liberal and they will never vote Conservative. So that is, there are people who say I can never vote Liberal, and so they vote NDP. Right. Same thing with, so that does happen for sure.
I think, though, the Conservatives, of the 17 seats that you lost, I think the Conservatives won 10 of them, if I've got my math correct, and I think the Liberals took 7, but the Conservatives benefited far more from this than I think the conventional wisdom was in the way the strategic vote or whatever, the vote splits happened. I mean, they have been going after sort of that trade unionist, working class voter in a very aggressive way. I mean, does the party need to sort of pick a lane between that sort of working class trade unionist focus and the sort of urban progressive focus, which are I'm oversimplifying a bit, but the kind of the two halves of the party to a degree?
Yeah, we're going to have to evaluate what happened in those ridings. It is also possible that New Democrat voters in those ridings may have voted Liberal, and that allowed the Conservatives to win.
Right.
And that definitely is a dynamic in Canadian politics, not just in this campaign, but we've had that fight many times where people are so afraid of voting Conservative and so afraid and in this case they were afraid of voting Conservative and they were afraid of Donald Trump, and they were saying, because I'm so afraid of that, I'm going to vote Liberal in ridings where it made no sense, and that actually voting Liberal would get you a Conservative. Okay,
so Anne, just as a final point, I know you're going to sort out who the interim leader is going to be as a party, and the caucus will make that decision. For the permanent leader going forward, should that be someone from inside the caucus of 7, or is it better to have someone from outside who can maybe spend some time building it, broadening it, reassessing it without sort of the burden of having to lead a party without official party status in the House of Commons?
Yeah, that will depend, obviously, on who the candidates are. We've had success with both those models. We both Jack Layton and Jagmeet Singh did not have seats in Parliament when they became leaders. They got seats later, so that is something that Tommy Douglas didn't have a seat in Parliament and had to run in a by-election to get a seat in Parliament. So that's not that unusual, and there are advantages and disadvantages to that. I think over the long term, though, you probably need to have a seat in Parliament, even if you don't have it at the beginning of your leadership. You just have to be in there in the question period, drilling the government, and I don't think you can really do it from outside Parliament. So I think whether they come from inside or outside, they at some point will have to get a seat in Parliament.
I don't know, maybe Mark Carney gave everyone a new model: become Prime Minister before you get elected. It seemed to work for him this year. That was a very everything about this is weird.
Politics have been wild, yeah.
Yeah, I know. It has been an abnormal election. Anne McGrath, campaign spokesperson for the Democrats. Always appreciate your time. Thanks for being here today.
Thank you.